Where are you on the subject of water fasting, green juice fasting, intermittent fasting, weekly, long-term fasting? What role do you see this in terms of our lives?
Um, well, that's another good question. I have my own particular viewpoints on this. Yeah, as you said, I've been seeing patients for more than 35 years using these natural approaches, including using fasting to help aid people getting well. And I've utilized fasting therapeutically to help people resolve from rheumatoid arthritis and other conditions. And I could give you some examples where it might be appropriate to be utilized. The problem is that so many people I see are people who are food addicts and they're overweight and they can't control their food behavior. And they need to have a period of time where they abstain from their addictive triggers and learn how to eat healthfully. And the longer they can eat healthfully without utilizing the things they're addicted to, the more the brain can get normalize itself with time. And so I'm saying is that my experience over the last 30 years has taught me that consistency in their behavior, in developing what they do day in and day out, repeated over and over again, leads to the most long-term success. And there's somewhat of a risk in taking an overweight person who's not eating healthfully and putting them on a juice fast or a water fast and having them lose weight because they didn't really ingrain the repetition of the correct behaviors, and they still got to go back to eating again. And because the juice fasting and the water fasting overly slows down the metabolic rate, when they go back to their regular way of eating, which may not even be perfect, they're going to gain weight back quickly, and it may even overshoot the weight they started from. And if you look at all these overweight people that fasted, either water fasted or juice fasted, in order to lose weight, and follow their weight 1 year or 2 years later, as I have, then most of them have actually gained the weight back and more from those interventions. I'm just saying that, yes, I use fasting judiciously in appropriate cases, but I don't recommend it on a blanket level especially for people who haven't perfected following a healthy diet first. And let's say a person's trying to shrink a fibroid or reverse heart disease. Yeah, I might have them drop 30 pounds so they get to be a favorable body fat, and then I might put them on a fast to aid in the shrinkage of the fibroid. But I'm not going to fast them until they've already lost all their excess fat on the body. It's not going to shrink the fibroid unless you get the fat off the body first. I might utilize fasting with asthmatic, but I'm not going to put them on a asthmatic on a fast up front. I'm going to have them eat healthfully, wean down off their steroids over 4 to 5 months. And they're, and then if they're still off their meds and still getting a hint of wheeze, once they're off drugs, I can put them on a fast for a little bit to help further clean out the lining of the lung a little further and help them resolve their asthmatic conditions. They don't need drugs anymore. So I can utilize fasting as a therapeutic tool, but it's still something in the toolbox that we don't use that regularly, frankly, because most people haven't been doing the diet healthy enough and they haven't really long-term achieved an ideal weight, because ultimately your lifespan, your longevity and your health is the result of what you do day in and day out for most of your life. It's not whether you fasted a week in your life or a weekend in your life or a couple of weekends in your life. It's how you live day to day for the vast majority of your life. So there's no magic here. It's not, it's no magical cures. It takes initiative and discipline and repetition and persistence and dedication to the correct daily habits day in and day out for the rest of your life that aids you in the ability to control your health destiny and be the best version of yourself and live the healthiest version of yourself you can. So I'm not against fasting. I even utilize it. I just don't want to overutilize it because it's not the important point, especially for people who haven't yet mastered eating healthful eating first.
Should we ideally stop eating? Let's have a 16-hour window between dinner and breakfast, ideally.
Um, I'm not sure it has to be 16 hours, but yes, I try to teach that and to do that myself. I'm trying to do that myself where we like at our retreat in San Diego, we serve dinner at 5 o'clock. so everybody's pretty much finished eating by 5:30 p.m. and they eat breakfast at 8 in the morning. But let me say that it's because when we rest and sleep at night, that's when most of the healing takes place, is during sleep. And actually, most of the weight loss takes place during sleep too, by the way. So we want to have you get most benefit out of your sleep. And we don't want food refluxing up and down your digestive tract during sleep either, when you're lying flat while you're digesting food in your stomach. You shouldn't have food in your stomach when you're lying flat trying to sleep at night. So we could call it time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. But yes, we should try to finish eating 3 to 4 hours before we go to bed at night. And you know what? Some nights, if like the chefs in my retreat are making such a delicious meal and a great tasting dessert, and I'll be tempted to overeat and have a second dessert or something, and I ate at 5:30 and I still overate, and so I shouldn't have eaten that last piece of food. I'll be in my bed at night at 10 o'clock at night, and I'll feel still I'm digesting the food. Just even if you eat in the correct caloric window, even if you eat in the correct time window, allowing 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, if you eat too much at dinner, if you overeat till at dinner, you could still prolong the digestive process and cause you to continue digesting while you're sleeping, which is not a great health thing to do, not good for your long-term health. So yes, I'm trying to be good about that. And the people I advise are trying to be good about that, is eat an earlier dinner. Don't overeat at dinner. If you eat till you stretched your stomach out till you were full, then you overate, because you have limited capacity to efficiently digest food. When we overeat till fullness, then you're going to prolong digestive time, interfere with digestion capacity, and cause more fermentation and putrefaction of the food during digestion. And then you're going to prolong digestion and interfere with the amount of anti-aging phenomenon that can occur during rest and sleep. The answer to your question is yes. It's better to have a wider window there with an earlier dinner, but not eating late at night and having a later breakfast for that window. You know what I mean? What if you ate 8 o'clock at night and went to bed on a full stomach, and then you didn't eat the next meal the next day till 12 noon? That's not a good thing to do. That's even worse. So yes, if you're going to make your window be 14 or 15 hours by eating an earlier and lighter dinner, yeah, that's a good thing we should be shooting for.
So if you took the last 1,000 people that listened to every word you said and did exactly what you said and followed them for the last 30 years, what happened to those people? Like, does 20% still get sick? Or like how well Caldwell Esselstyn has used the term heart attack proof. Like for people who follow what you're doing physically, emotionally, they do everything they're supposed to do. Just do they still end up with diabetes? Some of them, do they still have heart disease and cancer? Like, how well does this actually work in the real world?
I think that as doctors, we're always shocked to see how well it works. It even shocks us sometimes how well it works and how rare it is that people, but people, of course, don't always follow what they're supposed to do. But there are other causes of ill health, including, stress and chemical exposures. It's not always 100% nutrition. A lot of people have a lot of emotional issues and problems in their life. But nevertheless, we're always fascinated by the results people are getting. Like, for example, a woman who was on the National Renal Transplant list waiting for a new kidney with lupus nephritis, who followed the program 100%, and within 6 months, her creatinine went from 4.2 to 0.8, and she didn't need a new kidney and her lupus went away. Or a person with some type of significant death sentence faced in front of him, like a person with metastatic ovarian cancer or metastatic breast cancer who's going to be dead in in a year, and who's still alive now 20 years later. The point I'm making right now is that the shocking thing isn't the rare individual who gets sick, who's living healthfully, right? And so few people live healthfully. The shocking thing is all the really, really people who are very sick and watching them live to be 95 to 100 years old in good health and watching them gain their health back. I've taken care of a lot of patients in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, even 20, 30 years ago. And I've watched them grow old and thrive in their later years. So yeah, I think that I can say that my experience of being one of the elders in this movement is that I've seen people who really live healthfully are demonstrating to me that the normal lifespan for humans is between 95 and 105 years old, with a bell-shaped curve, with a narrow bell peaking around 100 years old. That's what I'm thinking that I'm seeing. And that doesn't mean there aren't outliers and that people, but it's a narrower bell. You know what I mean by a narrower bell? That on the American diet, people live around 77, 78, but it's a wide bell. Someone lives to be 90 and some person dies at 60, and some people, they're all over the place with what's going to happen. There's a tremendous amount of luck involved. When you go to a nutritarian diet, what we see is the bell narrows. We don't see people dying young. We don't see, so it congregates. So we see most people getting similar results and getting to be living in their late 90s in pretty good health. And this is people that I've seen that weren't that healthy when they first came to me. And they might have had heart disease or some medical conditions when they first appeared as a patient in my office. And I was able to, change their diet and their view of the world and their view of food. And I've noted, and they've thrived and survived past expectation, because you would have think the first half of the life that got them sick would have dramatically shortened their life. And I didn't see that to be the case. That once they put everything done everything right, even if they started this later in life, so many of these people have had really had excellent and lengthy lives as a result of it.